welcome everyone to the presidential debate this evening. I'm Ariel Pazorski. I currently serve as the Vice President for Student Senate, and I'm going to allow Justin to introduce himself.
And my name is Justin Logan. I currently serve as the President of the Student Senate. And I'll start by going over the rules for the debate this evening so that the students in the audience know the rules. We'll start off by asking both tickets to introduce themselves and share their platform. They'll each have 5 minutes to do that. Then we'll ask them to describe their past leadership experience. They'll each have 3 minutes. And then the third and final question from our moderators this evening will be, why do you want to be president and what changes would you like to make happen on campus? Each ticket will have 2 minutes, each president will have 2 minutes to respond, presidential candidate, sorry. And then after those first introduction questions, we'll have 3 topics that you guys will ask questions about. And each of those topics will be given 10 minutes. You guys will ask questions and each ticket will have 30 seconds to respond. Those 3 topics are improving academic life of students, political advocacy at the state level, and ensuring safety on campus, in that order. So we can get started. So will the candidates please introduce themselves and their campaign platform, starting with the Elijah Bush and Morgan Olson campaign.
Hi, my name is Elijah Bush. I am a composite social science education major. I'm also a third-year student. And I'll let Morgan.
Okay, I'm Morgan Olson, and I'm an elementary education major, and I am a second-year student.
So essentially our platform is about putting the students first. We believe that every student's voice is important, and if elected, we would hold a whole bunch of town halls and forums where students can come ask questions for us and stuff like that. We also want to ensure that there's student representation in like every decision that's possible for us. So that includes like having students on university committees and meeting with administration regularly. And that's about it.
Perfect. Wyatt Ostis and Josh May.
To my left here is Wyatt Ostis. He's a junior. He's from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but he moved to Rapid City when he was 8. And he considers himself raised in the hills. He has a deep love of nature and outdoors, and that's a large part of why he contributed his coming to BH. And he loves photography, and the excellent photography program is also a big part of that. He's majoring in English and mass communication with an emphasis in photography. And he also has a minor in professional writing. He was a part of the International Service Learning trip last fall, or 2 falls ago, to South Africa and Botswana, where he was exposed to life-changing experiences that altered his worldview.
And to my right is sophomore Joshua Vaith. He is from Scotland, South Dakota. He is studying professional accountancy, economics, and finance, and he will also be attending South Africa and Botswana at the end of this week, actually, which is exciting. So he's obviously very involved on campus. He's a nominee for the Vice President Rising Star Award in the for the SVACs. And so something that we both pride ourselves on as being involved on campus and in the different ways that we are is advocating for students. So that is our first of 3 things that we plan to do as a ticket that we want to ensure that gets done next year if we are elected your new president and vice president. So as far as advocation goes, we both have experience advocating for students. We both attended SHED this past year, and so that really is a great way for students to get to know the political process and get to know what goes on and affects higher education on the state level. It was something that was very beneficial for myself going as a second year. That was my second year in attendance, and for Josh in the first year. I'm also involved in advocating for individuals in a more local level outside of campus. I participated in the Women's March, and I'm also helping participate in the planning for the March for Our Lives coming up. So that's something where we are trying to advocate for all types of groups, whether it be students and otherwise. And so we think that that lends to a great experience in advocation that is going to enable us to advocate for students in an awesome way.
I am also a strong participant in the diversion program, which is we're advocating for restorative justice for students that have received and admit to a minor in consumption or possession of alcohol. It gives them a good way to learn from what they did and not have it greatly affect their future. And Another thing that we can do to improve our advocacy is continued relationship with the administration and students and just transparency. Continued support for bills that positively affect higher education and continued opposition to bills that adversely affect higher ed to legislators during periods and shed days.
And another thing that we want to do to help increase student advocacy is increase communication between the Student Senate, the clubs and orgs on campus, and the general population of students that Student Senate is serving, so that the best interest of students are always met. So we really want to not only continue that communication that we built on in the last 2 years with not only the administration but with the students, and also ensure that that is built upon even further and that students are represented properly to both the faculty and administration on campus. The second pillar of our campaign is community. So something that both Josh and I care a lot about is our communities, and it's something that we've been involved in for a long time. Back in high school, I helped start a charity to take senior pictures for students that weren't able to afford them, and that is something that's continued through my time at BH as a participant in Jacket Pack and as the president. Last year, we instituted a new community service program where we were collecting gifts for students in the local Spearfish area, because that is something that we saw missing, and that's something that we tried to fill in. So that's something that we that we have been working on, and I'll let Josh kind of explain some of the community things that he's also done.
As a member of Campus Activities Board, we participate in Operation Christmas Child, which I also did for as much as I can remember in high school, because my church did it growing up. Operation Christmas Child is where you, around Thanksgiving time, you take shoe boxes and Christmas presents that you send overseas to third world countries for kids that don't get Christmas presents. And also with CAB, we participate in Adopt a Highway. Another thing that we can do to improve our community is continue to work with the Spearfish City Council, and we've seen, and so far we've had a member of Student Senate attend each meeting.
And time.
All right. Next, we will be asking the candidates to explain their past leadership experience. Each ticket is going to have 3 minutes to do so, and we will be starting with Wyatt Ostis and Josh Bate.
I have been a member of Presidential Student Ambassadors for the last 2 years, which is probably not a very well-known organization on campus. President Jackson hosts many events on and at his residence and around campus throughout the school year, and we help him host those events. We open the door for people, greet them, give them a little brief tour. They haven't been there before. And then if there's somebody that's just kind of like off to the side, not really into the flow of things, just go talk to them, make them feel at home, make everybody feel at home on campus here. I have been a representative of the Student Senate since the fall elections. I have 3 jobs on campus. I work for Network and Computer Services. I work in the mailroom, and I'm also a peer advisor for the College of Business and Natural Sciences. I am a member of Campus Activities Board, and I was a legislative page during legislative session in Pierre when I was in high school, which was a very good experience.
So I have been the office administrator for Student Senate for the past 2 years, so that's something that I think has given me a lot of experience in the process of getting things done in the Student Senate and enabling me to know the process well enough to represent students properly and get things done efficiently. On top of that, I was president of Jacket Pack last year, and that was another thing. That was another portion of our campaign that we didn't quite get time to introduce. But engagement is something that's very important to us, and something that I know pretty well, being involved with Jacket Pack so heavily since really the outset. My freshman year was the first year that Jacket Pack existed, and last year being president gave me a good eye for what was needed to improve engagement on campus. I was co-president of Crux Climbing Club 2 years ago, so that's something that we helped restart that club, and it's also kind of more of a niche club than something that I've been a part of before, and that gives me a point of view of more niche students and those needs for those clubs specifically, which has been really great. And I think that's about it.
Okay, next we'll go to Elijah and Morgan.
All right, so previous leadership is I was vice president of community council for Humbert Hall, and I was also involved in RHA, and so what I did with that was I listened to the students' voices, and I brought them up to where they needed to be. I was Operations Director of Campus Activities Board, and I am now Entertainment Officer of Campus Activities Board, and I lead events on campus, such as educational lectures, concerts, socials, and it helps raise student retention and engagement across campus, which is very important.
Okay, so my leadership experience, my freshman year, I was president of Jacket Volunteers, which has turned to Circle K, if any of you know that organization. I was the secretary of the Gay Straight Alliance, secretary treasurer of ACES. I currently serve as the president of the Residence Hall Association. So we represent all of the residence halls and the residents living in those halls. And I have been involved in Student Senate for the last 2 years. Currently, I serve on the Budget Committee, Academic Affairs Committee. I was in the Internal Affairs Committee and Public Relations Committee. So through all those different committees, I've been able to gain a lot of experience dealing with all these different areas. And I've been able to meet with various administration officials and students.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to move into our next portion.
Oh, we have one final question.
Oh yeah, okay. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, so the last questions for our tickets from the moderators is just for the presidential candidates, and it's why do you want to be president? What changes would you like to make happen? You'll each have 2 minutes to respond, starting with Elijah.
So I'm running for president because I am a well-organized, compassionate leader who really thinks that the students are the key to this campus. If elected, I will hold a number of town halls and forums where students can come voice their concerns. And I also want to have an open door policy where any student can come up to me if I'm walking the hallway and feel free to ask me any questions. A couple of changes I would like to make relate to the Student Senate. I would like to move us away from using paper and more to online stuff. So our agendas, we print a lot of paper every week. So I would like to get rid of that. Related to campus-wide, I would like to introduce a student survey that would go out each semester. It would allow the students to rate various issues based on priority and what kind of issues they want the Student Senate to look at. My second idea is I want to have each month I would like to meet with a different group of people. So for the first month, I would like to meet with the presidents or representatives from each of the various clubs and orgs on campus. The second month it might be resident assistants, and the third month it might be athletics or some other group like that. This way we can see what issues matter to each of these groups and then come up with a idea of how to solve those issues. And then,
Okay, Wyatt, you'll have 2 minutes to respond.
Excellent. Well, I really am running for this position because I want to be able to give to BH what BH has given to me. So I came to school here not really sure what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go to school and whether I would stick around for more than a year or two. And here I am almost 3 years later with a year left, and I could not be happier with the choice that I made. I really think that BH has given to me much more than I could ever provide to it, but it's something that I sure want to try to give back if possible. And so I'm running because I want to ensure that the students of BH are happy, safe, and can go out and become high functioning members of society. I want to be sure that the students that graduate from BH are ones that when they say where they graduated from, people are impressed because of the caliber of person that they are and that BH transformed them into. I'm running because I care about the students and because I care about our university as a whole, and because I want to leave the largest, most positive impact that I can because of a large positive impact that BH has left on me. As far as what I want to do, if I were to be elected president, I would expand on the initiatives that we have already been working on in the 2 years that I've been in Senate. I think that we have come up with an amazing number of great ideas, and we've executed on so many of those, and we're so close to finishing so many others that I think that we can continue on such a positive path and continue to make a huge difference to the students on campus. I want to continue advocating for both students on the state level and peer, and I want to build a relationship with students, between the students at BH and the city of Spearfish. I think that that's incredibly important. have concrete ideas in our campaign to increase engagement, and I would really love to test the waters of a potential GAF increase for students that would go directly towards student engagement.
All right. So now we are going to, we're going to move into our last section, which is the topic questions. The questions will be asked by members of the audience, and each ticket will have 30 seconds to respond to the individual question. No follow-up questions are going to be allowed for the sake of time, and any rebuttals are only going to be allowed if a candidate or ticket is mentioned by the other candidate or ticket, and these rebuttals will also be limited to 30 seconds. And we're going to start with our first topic, which is improving the academic life of students.
This time we'll take questions from the audience.
I have a question. So what are the biggest areas of improvement you see yourself making in your campaign
Is this directed at
as
me?
president, to both of you?
Okay, we'll start with
Elijah.
Thank you, Elijah. 30 seconds to
Can
respond.
you actually repeat the question? Sorry.
What are the biggest areas of improvement you see yourself making in your position, specifically concerning academic affairs?
So this year we did implement a academic affairs committee, which I would, we are working on, the internal affairs committee is working on rewriting our constitution, and I included that in there. So that's a big part of, I want to keep pushing for that, because I think academic affairs is a very important area, and there's a lot of issues like right now that we're tackling. So, okay.
Still have 5 seconds. Okay, Wyatt.
I agree with what Elijah said. I think that the Academic Affairs Committee needs to become a standing committee because I don't think that they will ever run out of things to do. It's something that we had last year that went away and that we've brought back this year because of certain concerns, and I think it's something that needs to continue to be worked on. Right now, some of the things that we're working on are getting 4-year plans on the website. Peer advisors are being put into place for students to get customized 4-year plans. Course rotations are going to be put back on the website, and we're looking at paying student tutors as well. So that's something that we want to continue.
Next question, relating to improving the academic life of students. What? Or, sorry.
It's okay. Do I have to pick a candidate to ask this to?
No, you can ask the both.
Okay. So meeting with the higher ups in the academicness, meeting with the deans and with other administration, wherever that may be. What is something that you want to pursue even further with those relationships? Like a problem that you foresee that can be easily improved upon.
And we'll start with Wyatt, 30 seconds.
So something that we have continued to do as an executive board is meet with President Jackson, and those meetings have been very fruitful to increase conversations and to see where he's at and what he is thinking about the lay of the land on campus. Academically related, I think that something that we want to continue to work with, as he brought up to us, is open source textbooks, or the ability to have open source textbooks for students to save them dollars, basically.
Cool.
And Elijah.
I definitely think communication between the students and the deans and as well as the provost is very important. So if elected, I would find ways to increase the channels between our student senate and those people. I definitely think they know a lot more about academics than we do, and related to 4-year plans and stuff, working with them on that stuff is very important. So.
Samara.
Do you have any ideas of ways to increase retention on campus? And also, do you think there are any majors that are lacking any acknowledgement from the campus? Resource-wise?
And we'll start with Elijah.
Related to retention, I definitely think having the 4-year plans accurately on our website and having course rotations accurate for all people would be a good thing. Related to certain majors, definitely right now the composite majors are potentially being eliminated, and those are really good majors for people who want to be in education. So I'm a composite social science education major, so then I don't have to major in all these different areas, and so trying to push to keep that kind of major would be one idea that we have.
And what?
I'm a composite major as well, so I completely agree with Elijah. Another thing that we think is that student engagement increases academic standing for students. I think the more engaged students on campus are consistently the ones that are academically outstanding. And so we think that supporting the Student Engagement Leadership Office and Erica and all the great work that Jane and Dr. Flagstead and Erica all do is something that is really important. Getting students engaged on campus is also incredibly important to help them feel that they have a place to come back to the following year.
Is there another question from the audience? Daxton?
How have the two candidates helped improve the academic life of students so far, and what initiatives would you take?
Since that's a two-part question, I think we can give you a minute.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. We'll start with Wyatt with a minute.
Okay. Well, like I said earlier, as being a part of the Academic Affairs Committee, we are revamping those four-year plans and working with recruitment and retention specialists to increase the interaction between peer advisors and students. Josh is actually a peer advisor himself, so he is really on the front lines of redoing these and customizing 4 years plans per student, and I think that's something that would also increase retention. If you have a clear path of every class that you need to take for the next 4 years, I think it makes things a lot less scary, a lot less stressful, and a lot easier to handle come springtime when you're scheduling classes. We also are working on course rotation, so it's easier for students to plan their own schedules, and the student tutors, I think, is another way that we've tried to increase academic engagement, and also that I think in turn helps retention. As far as ideas for the future, I think these are all things that need to be continued, and I think that's about all I have time for.
Okay, Elijah?
So I would definitely agree with what Wyatt says. The Academic Affairs Committee is working on a lot of initiatives right now, and I would hope to continue to push for those. Working with the deans is also very important. They have a lot of great ideas for us of like how to push for certain majors and to push for like academic plans and stuff like that. And I definitely think working with them will allow us to have more initiatives in the future and stuff like that. So.
Another question from the audience, Linnea?
So what is one resource you think students need at BH? What is one resource you think students need that BH should either improve or implement?
Is this like academically speaking or?
Academically speaking.
30 seconds to respond, starting with Elijah.
I definitely think advising is a key area that definitely needs improvement. A lot of the academic advisors have somewhere between 80 or 100 students, depending on who they are. And I definitely think finding a way to cut down on how many students they have to advise and finding ways that people can reach out to them more often is a key issue.
I agree completely. I think that advising is something where tenured faculty or tenure track faculty are unable to process the entirety of the workload that they have each semester, and I think that's something where students do feel lost. I think it's something that peer advisors are on a track to potentially fix. I think that improved software that the campus is using is also going to be able to help students do some of their own advising and pick out where those courses are going to be. And I also believe that student tutors and potentially graduate assistants to classes or undergraduate assistants would be incredibly helpful with improving the academic life to students.
Next question from the audience. We have time for about 1 to 2 more questions on this subject. Kyle?
So you both mentioned that there are improvements that we can make within the Senate Constitution. What are those that you are looking at for further change?
And we'll start with Wyatt.
I think that I personally believe that the Senate Constitution and constitutions in general are something that need to remain as solid as possible throughout the years and be able to remain as semblances of the institution that they represent. And I think that our Constitution, having been just recently changed, is incredibly updated and incredibly together. And I don't think that it needs an intense amount of changes, but obviously I would be open to changes. I think that those need to be looked at carefully, though, and a revamp is not something that's needed.
Okay, Elijah?
I would definitely say constitutions they need to be changed for the times. So like each year, there's different situations that may pop up, and so we may have to change our constitution and stuff like that. Currently, they are working on doing a constitution and bylaws. So in the past, technically we're not able to suspend our constitution, and in order to make any changes, we have to go through the students all the time. So if we have bylaws like related to, you have to do 3 dean meetings, and if we want to change that to 2, we would be able to do that.
Linnea for the last question.
Okay. So you guys have a lot of ideas on, and areas that you can see improvement-wise in academic affairs. So how do you plan on organizing and prioritizing to ensure that these ideas are implemented successfully?
We're starting with Elijah. You have 30 seconds to respond.
So definitely making sure that the academic affairs is has access to the resources that they need is definitely high on the list. Making sure that whoever chairs that committee knows who to contact and what other resources they may need is definitely important. And I definitely think if the Senate just assists them, that will help too.
Wyatt?
I think the proper implementation of such large goals is going to come down to delegation and delegating these things to committees, kind of similar to what Elijah said, and just ensuring, I think a mark of a good leader is the ability to delegate and the ability to trust in the people that he or she works with, to know that they can get the things done. So I think it's about getting every senator involved and any student that is interested as well, to get them involved in the process so that we can make the largest change possible.
And that wraps up the first section of our discussion. The next section is political advocacy at the state level, and we do have a little bit more time than we were expecting, so we'll give 1 minute to each candidate for responses and 15 minutes for this section. So you guys are free to start asking questions about political advocacy at the state level.
Do you guys have any specific lobbying ideas or motives?
Okay, we'll start with Wyatt with 1 minute.
Actually, something that had been brought up to us and that we think is a pretty interesting idea that we want to look into is the idea of potentially purchasing lobbying badges for members of our student senate, so that we could take the opportunity to go to peer more often than just during SHED, and to be able to advocate for students of Black Hills State University specifically, rather than advocating for the Student Federation. I mean, I believe that Josh and myself would both be excellent candidates for this, but it would also be something where we would want to take student interest in this to account and see who would potentially be a good fit for this sort of position. It's something that would allow students to work closely with the administration, and while also making their own voices heard on a much deeper and more personal level to legislators and peer, that I think is incredibly important. I also think that the full-time equivalent student dollars that we receive is something that needs to be looked at and adjusted as largely as possible, because it is a large discrepancy between BH and other universities.
Okay, Elijah, you'll have 1 minute to respond.
I definitely think a lot of people don't really know that they can contact their legislators, and like a lot of that information is very public. So I definitely think pushing that on people, like telling them, hey, you can email your legislator if you have any issues. I definitely think that is one way that we can effectively lobby people, especially if you come from their district. So kind of pushing that. I also think the whole lobbying badge thing is also a good idea too. I know when we went to SHED this year, a number of us, we were in the House Education Committee, and a number of us really wanted to speak, but we weren't able to. So I definitely think that's a great idea to take with us.
Next question.
What kind of reputation would the candidates like to establish for BH at the state level?
Okay, well, Elijah, you'll have 1 minute to respond.
I definitely want outside people to see BH as a place for people to come and get a good education, and a place to come and get new ideas that maybe they haven't thought about before. I definitely think people I actually really don't know how to answer that question, but
Okay. Wyatt, you'll have 1 minute to respond.
I think that the reputation that I want to give the Student Federation, the Board of Regents, and lobbyists and legislators in peer is the same reputation I think that we've been able to give them the past several years, is that BH is an outspoken and well-spoken and articulate school with articulate and well-spoken students. And it's something where you see BH students lobbying legislators while other students from other student senates are the ones that are hiding in the bathroom so they don't have to talk to legislators. And I think that that's something that I want to make sure that we continue, because we have proven over the last several years that we are the ones that care the most in terms of being willing to go introduce ourselves to a stranger and talk about something that they may disagree with us about, but we're still willing to do it anyways because of how much we care. And we want to make sure that they know that we care about South Dakota, but we also represent Spearfish and Black Hills State University.
Thank you. Next question, I think Kyle, you had.
Yep. So it's been said that we are, like, students' voices are very important at the state level and that the students come first. So how can we accurately share the voices and concerns of the student body in these bills that we're lobbying for? Because lobbying is no easy task.
Okay, we'll start with Wyatt. You have a minute to respond.
And this is another thing that I want to kind of loop back to the whole engagement portion of our campaign platform. We want to ensure that students are as engaged as possible, and that doesn't just mean in clubs and orgs around campus. That means that they are attending our student senate meetings, because each and every one is open to the public. If people didn't know that, I mean, please feel free to come to one of our meetings and make sure your voice is heard and hear what we're talking about, because when it does come time to where the legislature is meeting, we do talk about these bills that are important to higher education, and we love to hear student input. And so I think ensuring that the face of Student Senate is large enough that students know where they can go to speak to people that have a voice in peer, have a trusted voice in peer, I think is important. So I think student engagement is the top of the line for us.
Okay. Elijah, you'll have a minute to respond.
Definitely going back to what I said at the beginning about having an open door policy, I definitely think it's important to, even as president, to reach out to individual students and like ask them what kind of concerns they may have or what issues they want us to look at. So I definitely think that's one way that we can accurately share their concerns with the legislators or the Student Federation. Also having forums and town halls and stuff like that, and getting students to come to those events and come to Student Senate meetings is very important. Many people don't really realize that Student Senate meetings are open to the public, and finding ways to kind of, I know recently we started doing live streams, so I think that's kind of helped get some people to at least see what we're working on and stuff like that. So continuing to do that kind of stuff.
Next question from the audience. Linnea.
So what platforms do you see as important to our students that you could represent well at the state level?
And we'll start with Elijah with 1 minute.
Can you be more specific?
Like, what do you see as like an important concern that students have that you'd be able to represent to like legislators and to like the, you know, people at the state level?
I definitely think one concern would be like tuition and fee raises. I feel like a lot of students are concerned about increasing prices of their education, and so I think that's one issue that we could accurately represent to legislators and other people involved in that process, including the Board of Regents. And I would say also academics too, because the legislature also deals with a lot of like what programs might be offered at campuses and stuff like that.
Why don't have a minute to respond?
Well, I really wanted to make it apparent to legislators and peer that students at BH are engaged in the issues, that it's not just coming from 1 to 15 students at BH, that it's coming backed by the voices of the thousands of students that we represent. And I think that that's an important thing to allow, to make sure that they hear. But I also think that with these issues, it depends on the bill, and there are things that pop up differently each year. Tuition and fee raises was something this year that they tried to take away from the power of the Board of Regents, and I thought that that was incredibly important that we stood our ground on that and made sure that that didn't happen. And thankfully, the bill died. And I think there are also things that come up year after year that are things that we need to take a read on the student body about, but also continue to be outspoken and stand firm on. Things like transgender bathroom bills, gun bills, as far as concealed carry or carrying on campuses and things like that. Those are things that tend to come up year after year that students tend to not be for, and we like to stand firm and be outspoken in our representation of those views.
Your time's up. Move to the next question from the audience. Linnea, another question?
My last one for this one, actually. So how does representation for BH at the state level compare to other schools, and how can we improve the relationship that we have there?
And we'll start with Wyatt with a minute to respond.
I think I mentioned earlier, BH kind of blows everybody else out of the water when it comes to how we are seen by other universities. We know not only are we willing to talk to these people and sometimes, get walked away from or ignored or whatever, we are, more than willing to do that because of how much we care as students of the Student Senate, but we also are much more engaged and knowledgeable on each of the topics that are talked about. So we're not bringing up a bill that we just read. We're bringing up bills that we've been reading through for weeks, that we've been keeping updated on in our meetings, and we are letting these legislators know that, yes, we're young, but we know what we're talking about, and we will stand firm for what is best for our campus, and I think that's something that needs to continue. And I think that's just something that other campuses don't really mark up against us.
Okay. Elijah, you'll have a minute to respond.
I definitely would say BH is very persistent when we are opposed or in favor of certain things. I also say our school tends to be a little bit more social, so we actually talk to these legislators and stuff like that. So continuing that trend and finding ways to get even more students to reach out and do stuff like that is also important. I had something but it's gone, but that we should be going for. So just voicing the students' concerns is my main goal.
Okay. And Wyatt, you'll have a minute to respond.
So I think that one thing that I brought up earlier that can be kind of hard to understand, and I'm hoping I can explain it in a minute, but the FTE, or the full-time equivalent student, is something that for each full-time equivalent student that a university has, they receive a certain amount of funding. BH is roughly half of the next nearest university in full-time equivalent student funding, which is an enormous discrepancy that is completely unfair to our university, as Dakota State University and Northern State University and the School of Mines all have much lower enrollments than we do and much lower student populations that need to be taken care of. And I think that those dollars would be incredibly important to our students and our campus. And I think that that's something that we want to work with the state legislature on whatever level that we can to ensure that that's something that gets looked at and taken care of, because it is a huge problem that not very many people know about that we would love to address.
Okay. We have time for about one more question about political advocacy. Any more questions? Move on to the next. Oh,
No.
Kyle, go for it.
I was just gonna ask, what's something that you want to continue that has been working well, rather than something you want to change or implement that's new?
Okay, we'll start with a minute for Wyatt.
Something that I want to continue as far as the state level goes and things like that, I think is the tradition of BH being a school that is well-read and well-spoken and outspoken and firm on each of our positions. I think that it's not only something that helps reflect on BH, but I think the process of becoming that well-spoken and outspoken person that each student senator is and becomes over the course of SHED is something that cannot be lost out on for each student senator. I think that the training that we go through and the different topics that we try to cover in meetings to ensure that each of the student senators is knowledgeable in the entire political process is something that is invaluable to the student senators. And it also makes BH look really good when we have such outspoken and well-spoken senators. So I think it's something that needs to be continued.
Okay, and then a minute for Elijah.
I would definitely say continuing our close relationship with the administration is very key to being able to get stuff done on campus, and that includes if we want to go to the state level. So keeping that close relationship with the president, the vice president, and other administration officials is very one of my goals. I also think being very positive in every situation is a good attitude to have, I think.
Okay, so we will move into our third and final topic, which is ensuring safety on campus. And we'll be taking questions from the audience.
Samara?
What are your safety ideas for Senate? Public safety ideas.
And we'll start with Elijah, and you'll have a minute to respond.
I would say definitely reaching out to public safety and seeing kind of where they're at currently and where they want to go, and trying to find, like, say they need more resources, trying to figure out how we can provide that for them would definitely be a goal of mine. I think it's also important to reach out to students and see like what kind of concerns they have about safety, like if we need more lights on campus or if they need public safety officers to patrol a bit more, stuff like that.
Okay. Wyatt, you'll have a minute to respond.
So as part of my duties as being the office administrator on campus, I am also the head of the campus safety, or the Senate Safety Committee. So this is something that we've been working on for the last 2 years. And as far as student safety on campus goes, there's a lot that I could go into that would take much more than a minute. But something that we want to work with public safety on is getting 24/7 public safety on campus so that there always is a member of public safety on call. So that's something that's really important to us. We also participate in the safety walk each and every year, so we do try to hear those student concerns as well as be around and see those student concerns, as well as show those student concerns to members of the administration and faculty that are on those walks with us. We do meet monthly with Phil right now in our safety committee, and I think that's something that needs to continue. And we're also working on plenty of initiatives as far as a 24-hour escort service for students while walking around campus. Any parking issues that come up is something that we try to deal with. We're working on a safe ride program to shuttle students from downtown back to campus and to make sure that they get home safely to the dorms. And we are also working on presenting about the alcohol policy.
Okay. What?
Are there any immediate issues that you feel need addressed immediately concerning public safety on campus?
And Wyatt, you have a minute to respond first.
I think that there are two things that need to be talked about as soon as possible, and whether immediate action is taken is something that needs to be decided between members of the safety committee and public safety and Dr. Flagstad and Jane and all of the above. But 24/7 public safety is one thing that we really want to make happen, that we will be trying to make happen through whatever means necessary. But that's something that we think is going to drastically impact the lives of students, and as far as just the feeling of safety on campus, I think that's going to drastically increase. I also think that guns on campus is a big thing that's in the news right now, and it's also going to be a problem as long as we're around. I think guns in schools and things like that, whether it be at the state level with the state legislature or here on campus, those are things that are always going to be issues and fears of students. And I think, and we are meeting with Phil on Wednesday, and I do want to bring up some of those issues because I think that they need to be talked about, and I want to ensure that we are having an open communication with the administration on campus to solve those problems.
So you have a minute to respond.
So I definitely say parking is definitely a key issue on campus. So finding ways that we can address that, whether that's having them control more of the parking lots, especially like Humbert's parking lot. A lot of people tend to park there during lunch and dinner time, and a lot of the times they don't even have parking passes. So they end up taking parking spaces that some residents have already paid for. So definitely addressing that issue, and also going back to the 24-hour staff, that would also be a key issue that we would look at.
Okay. Star.
What are each of you currently doing to ensure safety among students?
Okay, we'll start with Elijah with a minute to respond.
So currently, as president of Residence Hall Association, through that organization, I work with the resident assistants and the presidents and vice presidents of each of the halls. And so we try and address any safety concerns they may have. And so reaching out through other organizations besides Senate is a good tool to use, I would say.
Okay. Wyatt, you'll have a minute to respond.
Well, Josh and myself are both on the safety committee. I don't know if I made that clear before, but Josh is a big help on the safety committee as well. And so I think that we're both doing as much as we can to ensure student safety on campus. There are some long-standing items that we've been working on in the safety committee, such as the Safe Ride program and the potential alcohol policy reform, but at least the analysis of the current alcohol policy. Those are things that have been in the works for the last 2 years or so now. We do have a presentation with Dr. Flagstead herself at 9 a.m. on Wednesday about the alcohol policy, so we should hopefully be able to take it in a new direction soon. And the Safe Ride program, we are going to a grant writing program in March in Rapid City to help us write a grant to the Department of Transportation to hopefully get that Safe Ride program instituted as soon as we possibly can, which is very exciting that it's finally kind of moving along. We also, as part of the safety committee, we work with, parking issues like Elijah said, and we are working towards a 24-hour escort service until we can get 24/7 public safety.
Thank you. Linnea.
So, in today's political climate and climates everywhere, it's really hard to be able to feel safe and know that students' concerns about safety, whether it's guns on campus or sexual assaults or any of that, are being heard. I think that's a major problem, is just making sure that our concerns are being heard and that we, are being fairly represented, I guess, and what we want and feeling safe on campus and everywhere else. So what can you guys do specifically, what can BH do, or what can you guys do to make sure that those precautions are being met and that safety, that our concerns are being heard and that safety can improve on campus and that you can make sure that students are feeling safe? Sorry, that was a lot, but.
No, I'll try my best.
Okay, Wyatt, let's start with a minute.
So I think that the best way to ensure that student safety needs are being met is listening to those students. One idea that we had is a potential anonymous Google form or anonymous poll of some sort, similar to the question of the week, but more precisely located on safety and maybe more consistently located on safety. So it would kind of function outside of the question of the week, so that it could be more consistently dealing with student safety on campus, so that we can pinpoint the problems that students feel and we can get those problems solved as we do work so closely with the campus administration. I think on top of that, we need to continue to speak with public safety and Phil. I think another great thing would be to introduce students to our public safety officers at the beginning of the year, whether it be in orientation, not just Phil, because I know that he does give a talk mostly about parking, but I know that Phil loves to talk about a lot of things that don't involve parking. And so Phil would, I'm sure, be happy to introduce himself to students, and I think that it's important that that rapport is built between students and public safety so that they feel that they have someone that they can trust and go to in times of need.
So I would say definitely working with the administration on finding ways to evaluate how, if there's any real concerns, and finding ways of how to solve those concerns would be one point that we would do. Another thing is having, through the Senate, having the administration kind of reach out to students and tell them, hey, this is what we do on campus to protect you, and this is what kind of precautions are put in place during certain events or whatever. Yeah.
Smart.
Are there any safety concerns in your opinions regarding the dorms or residence halls in general?
Okay, we'll start with Elijah, and you'll have 1 minute to respond.
I would say personally, it's always going to go back to parking. Parking is a very big issue on campus, especially for residents. Winona Cook doesn't actually have a parking lot located next to their building, and so that's an issue that I know Jane and a couple of other people from the administration are kind of working on right now. And then also I would say looking at what building renovations need to be done and what other renovations need to be done to protect students from harmful materials or events that may happen.
Wyatt, you'll have a minute to respond.
So I think that parking issues are, they are something that's an issue, and they're an issue on every college campus, but something that I guess has been on my mind just because of the political climate nationally right now, and something that we actually just brought up in our executive meeting today. But as far as what an active shooter scenario would look like in a dorm, and what scary situations and hopefully situations that never happen would look like in the dorm, and how those would be handled. And there's something that I never got information about, or I feel like I never received the information that I would have liked to receive while living in the dorms, and I think that it's something that needs to be looked at as far as what is the scenario if there's something that happens at a residence hall, or in the student union, or in the library, or in Meyer. I mean, making sure that students know what their protocol is, because it really isn't as simple as in high school where you went to all the different classes and then each teacher was in charge of that class and that's what happened. It's something where we're much more responsible for ourselves, and I think that it's something that needs to be discussed so that students know where to go in scenarios that hopefully never happen.
Oh, that's a lot. Okay. We'll start with Jocelyn, we'll work our way down the list.
Okay, so beside the parking problem, I mean, in my personal experience, I deal with RAs that they do not even know what to do when a problem like occurs. Do you have any idea of like prevention programs, or like how to educate students to know what to do when they are passing through something, or they know someone is passing through something they don't know how to deal with? I don't know.
Okay, we'll start with Wyatt.
So I guess if I'm like getting out of your question, what you want me to get out of it, I think that this is important, and it's something that working on the alcohol policy reform, it's shown me how little students can sometimes be informed about different policies that can directly affect them, whether it is the alcohol policy or the parking policy or the quiet hours policy or the policy of where to go to someone if your RA is not assisting in the way that you want them to. And so I think it is a large problem with educating students to ensure that they know that the resources are there, because I've come to realize that it's not a lack of resources all the time, it is just a lack of knowledge of those resources. And so I think it's important that students are educated on what those resources may be, and because I feel like I learn something new about a different resource on campus each week. And so I think that making sure, I don't know whether it would be adding to the student handbook or adding to RA presentations at the beginning of the year, but I do think that that education level is what needs to go up.
Okay. And I'll actually have a minute to respond.
I would say definitely having more training possibly for the RAs, and like having the professional staff maybe come into each of the buildings and sit with all the residents and kind of talk with them about various drills and other precautions that they may have to go through. We also think that having more drills about like having more fire drills, having more tornado drills, or having an active shooter scenario, and like practicing what you do in that situation is also something that the RA should maybe be pushing on the residents.
Mariana, you had the next question.
Being a member of the safety committee, an idea of arming our safety committee with guns was brought up, and I was wondering